Well, so Leon, let's get started. So it's been quite a journey for us over the last 9 years since that fateful lunch
Yes.
at Ravinia. 9 years ago. Wow. So
Yeah.
so maybe just tell me, Leon, a little bit more about your path to becoming a leader and your desire to be the day-to-day leader at DNA Behavior. I think is also important because that's really a role that you've transformed into as we've got to know each other better.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Hugh. I think, my journey is really kind of interesting because I started my career, and it really even dates back to when I was in high school. I probably had a huge interest in human behavior, just didn't know what it was and didn't know how to describe it. It was such a evolving sort of industry and science. And when I exited the military, I probably had if you look at my DNA profile, you realize probably why I chose my career. I chose it literally in split seconds because I needed to declare a major. And I thought, well, I'll be an accountant because, I'll probably always have a job. Didn't have any background really of it other than, some simple in high school, some simple accounting exercises, but I seemed to gravitate towards it. So I thought I'd pursue a career in it. Didn't really have any sort of career counseling around it. So spent, upwards of 17 years, got my public accounting background behind me, my CPA in 2 different states, and even opened up an accounting firm. And I actually have said that was probably the best and the worst decision of my life because I realized what I'm not great at. I work better and function better in organizations. And so I spent actually 17 years of my life in a large company, a public and a private company at the same time through the years, and ran the accounting operations group and had a great career. I gravitated towards systems type of integration. That was sort of my passion. And but it was really human behavior based. And I think through taking one of my first personality assessments, I realized just how fascinated I was to see behavior on a piece of paper and how that sort of translated into the work that I was doing. So when I ran a huge project at the company that I worked in, I realized that it was really about inspiring people at every level of the organization to do the best work. And that's really sort of how my career moved from accounting over to human behavior, was really through that 18-month project. And then I sort of went on the pursuit of my next career move, and that's about the time I met you.
So do you see that moment working? It was at Cox Communications, I think.
It was.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. It was.
So do you see that as a pivotal moment in your career?
I do. Again, sort of in my behavior, we look into my DNA profile and you'll see that I'm very spontaneous and I'm a risk taker. And I just woke up one morning thinking, this isn't where I need to spend my life. I just, it wasn't that I was really had a moment of clarity around it. I literally knew I needed to leave. And I went to my boss and announced that I was going to be leaving. And I really didn't have anything lined up. I just knew I needed to, there was something out there for me. And he was totally surprised and, did his trying to keep me, let's find a different role for you. And I like, no, it's really my time to explore, because there is a part of me, Hugh, that likes to be an entrepreneur. I would consider myself, as you and I went through the MK Master Key program, I'm much more of an entrepreneur in a company and not an entrepreneur. And I sort of realized that working with you, that what my strength is really around teams and enhancing innovation, but not being the innovator, if that makes sense.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think, just going back to you leaving Cox with a blank sheet of paper sort of reminds me of me leaving Arthur Andersen nearly 25 years ago. It is coming on that time as well, on a very similar basis. There was just a need that to get out. I knew that I was at the wrong place. This wasn't going to work anymore. And I had to figure it out in a different environment without the restrictions around me. And so to some degree, okay, 25 years, here we are today, but it's the same for you. But I think your risk-taking capability somewhat allows you to do that.
Yeah. It would probably be very uncomfortable. And I've actually talked with other people around that, my career path. And I think that scares a lot of people, that you would literally just leave without having something lined up. And and I did that a couple of times actually. And it's one of my lessons learned to not be as impulsive on big decisions like that, and to be more careful about that, because you've invested a lot in your career and so the company that you work with. So it's important to know and be very communicative about it as well. Because a lot of times, as you know, Hugh, you know this very well, one of the books that inspired me so much was Marcus Buckingham's First Break All the Rules. I remember reading it and really inspired around, it's not about necessarily the company, but it's about your immediate leader that you work with that probably keeps you in the company. And I really never forget that with anybody that works on our team.
Yeah, I think it's a message that we need to keep putting out there, and for people to be reminded by all the time that, your immediate boss, how important that is.
Yeah.
But I think coming back to a point you just made a minute ago, Leon, about being an intrapreneur more than an entrepreneur, I think is very insightful. Every business needs what I call the visionary, and then they need the integrator. And at one level, you've played, I think, the integrator of the people for us in our business, and that's the part that I've seen be so important. Ryan's probably played a bit more the integrator with the technology part, in building the technology stack, taking the ideas and in a structured way, putting it into something. But you've really looked after the people on a day in, day out basis. And in my mind, made them all feel encouraged, looked after. I know you call everybody once or twice a week at least. That's something that I probably would never have done. Not that I didn't, not because I don't care, but because it's not my instinct to do it that way. Right. And as I was looking at your profile again this morning, the report, the Business DNA report, getting ready for the interview, something I noticed there was how group orientated you are. So, I think something for us to explore is how important a team is. Yeah. To you.
I have a story about that, Hugh, that I learned after I started at DNA Behavior, and it relates to a book. If I can just grab this book.
Yeah.
It's called Confidence. And I was given this book at the end of a project that I ran. It was a $50 million project. And my boss at the time gave me the book, and it was really around his expectation or his perception that I was not confident. And the reason he thought that was because of my group-oriented nature, that he suspected that I wasn't confident in my decision-making. But really what it was my need to make sure that people were being inclusive in the decision, including him. But he saw that as not being confident. And it was interesting. And I didn't know how to articulate it at the time to him, because I really didn't know what that was until I started with DNA Behavior, and just how important that is. Because the opposite of that group-oriented is somebody that's very self-reliant. And somebody that's very self-reliant might not be as inclusive with the team, or sort of think that they've got the authority to build certain things, and that can put the organization out of alignment. So I never forget that, and that's why this book sits on my bookshelf, because I think it is important to know that and be confident sort of in who you are.
Yeah, I think that's the number one source of performance at the end of the day is confidence. And as you know, we have the formula for for performance at DNA that we use in our 360 tools, particularly, with confidence there and wisdom in the denominator. Because if the confidence goes, everything else is shattered. You know, and it's interesting that Leon, in the interest of sharing, when I built that formula, I studied this book.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Which is the same book that that you've used as your Bible for confidence.
And it's written in there from my boss. So that's, I didn't know that. That's quite a coincidence for us.
No, I read it quite a long time ago because I instinctively knew that this was important, and that was the thing that's missing for a lot of people. And it's really a lot of why we do what we do is providing the insights to someone, you know, through that behavioral awareness, then lifts your confidence. You know, for you to connect the dots to, you know, decision making to the fact that you're group orientated, which is actually probably the strongest part of your profile, overall profile. I mean, when you really unpack it, the detail that we have in the system is very important. And to ensure decision making is inclusive, you know, because that's not my nature to do that. I come up with the thoughts, but I've learned from you guys to defer to the team and what do you think? Because in the end of the day, you guys are going to do it. You know, between you and Ryan and Nikki, the three of you figure the solution out and go and get it done. And I think that's something that's, you know, that's really important.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a great way to work. And I know that, you know, sort of even for you, Hugh, I know that's not natural necessarily because you're quite self-reliant yourself. But it's really amazing to see how you interact with the group and look for that group sort of decision around it. And you certainly will always weigh in, but I admire that quality because I know it's not a natural talent necessarily, but you do it very well from a learned behavior.
Well, I think it's interesting because last Friday we were talking in the team meeting about the Helix Gateway, and we need to slow it down and sort out, you know, what are the steps and the priorities. And I thought, you know, my nature is, well, we've discussed it, we're ready to go. Let's just get cracking. But I knew enough to realize, okay, questions are coming up. Okay, this is not as clear as all that. We need to make it even clearer if it's going to work. And so, you know, it is bringing everyone on the journey, but I think that's part of, Leon, where, you know, you've done a wonderful job is bringing everybody along on the journey, you know, ensuring that they're all included and brought along on the journey, and then filter the problems back up to me if there is one. And so, you know, that's something that's, that is very powerful for us, but we've still been, you know, we've as a group been able to achieve a lot of things working that way. It's been fun,
which allows me to be sort of the entrepreneur that I like to be, because I can come up with some of that, you know, sort of the guidance around it, but having the team to really sort of vet that out it's a great job. It's not really a job, it's a career. It's excellent.
Yeah, well, and I think we've learned to hunt as a pack, which is good, rather than people being lone rangers, working in silos doing tasks. You know, I think we've learned to hunt as a pack pretty well. So, you know, that's good. So if I ask you the question, you know, what is, just sort of to wrap up on this and maybe move forward a little bit more to your talents, but which, you know, and this is all connected, but, you know, what would you sort of call as your happy place, and the place where you're most confident when you're working in the business?
Yeah, I think it literally is every day, sort of just having the variety, because I do tend to, you know, I've been accused of pivoting too quickly on things, and it's just my nature for the variety. It gets back to that spontaneous nature and risk taking. I like to have a lot of variety in the day. Something that would really sort of weigh me down is if I had to sit in, for 4 hours doing the same type of tasks. That can be very difficult for me. I tend to do better if I do works in 30-minute segments and even go back to it and finalize it. Even though that sounds highly efficient, it's quite efficient for me to do it that way. I sort of connect dots that way. I think you do a little bit of that too, Hugh.
Yeah.
It tends to work better for me to be able to do that. So it really does sort of operate in my strength. And a perfect day for me is if I can go out and do a run in the morning, sort of get back to start our daily call. I literally feel pretty fueled through the day just because of the variety of the work. And I really love dealing with our clients. Sort of client matters and sort of being able to jump in. I have to really watch myself not to try to problem solve, because usually it's beyond my technical capability to do it. But we have an excellent support team that, I have a lot of reliance on their ability to get things done. And the other thing that's been really rewarding for me is seeing the repeatable process that we've built along the way. So even though we're very creative and a lot of different solutions, we have a very good base of repeatability in the business, which will help us scale long term. And I'm excited about that. So it does give me everything.
Almost every contract or product offering we have or service we have pretty much works the same way, even though some of them are quite different in what gets delivered. So yeah, we've done a lot of work that, on that, and you and Ryan have been good with that. But just tell me more about the client service aspect, Leon. In terms of your business DNA style, one of the things I see is, not only being group orientated, but you're also quite encouraging with people.
Yeah, that is sort of a nice addition to the profile, that I do have that element. And it was taught early on with one of my mentors, Howard Tigerman, who worked at Cox. He was probably the first person. I worked there for close to 10 years. And I'll never forget, he sat down and he gave me Marcus Buckingham's book. He said, I'd really like you to read this, and I want to meet with you once a week. So my perception was that was a way to be punitive to me to, we're going to sit down and talk about sort of my performance for that week. And I remember the first time I sat down with him and he said, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, okay, well, work. And he's like, you can talk about anything, what's going on in your life. And I thought, wow, that's something different. I've not had anybody that really took a personal interest in that. And through these repeated meetings, and he was very careful never to change the meeting time. It was always the same time every week. We built a lot of trust with each other. And I would say, if I had to point to one person that was pretty pivotal in my career, it was Howard. And he was very much around organizational design, even though he was a controller in the company. He really believed that you built organizational sort of confidence around sort of building relationships with people. So that's what I always try to do with our clients, whether they're anywhere in the United States or Canada, anywhere around the world. I try to build a relationship with someone to have more than just a business relationship, but what's going on in their personal life as well. I don't have to get too detailed in that, but just, spouses' names, children, things like that. Because I think it's important everybody has a story. So I always like to at least acknowledge that, we're not just a company that can track behavior. We really have a face of a human connection with somebody. So that's sort of why I do it that way.
Yeah, I think that what I've seen is you've made yourself very approachable to the clients. They're not scared to call you up. Yeah.
There's probably been only a couple that I've had to get a little stern with, but even that, I've built relationships outside of that, because sometimes you do have things that you have to call out of bounds. And as long as it's sort of within the company policy, you've just got to make sure that things are done properly. And that does mean that, one time somebody told me that when you build relationships, it's like depositing into a bank account. And sometimes you need to withdraw. You need to have very direct conversations with people, but you built up enough deposits that you can do that. And it doesn't breach the trust that you've really built.
Yeah, the boundaries are important. So sometimes, Leon, you also remind me that you're quite spontaneous and flexible, which I think is a strength. So how does that play out for you in the role that you have?
Yeah, that's a great question because I am spontaneous and risk taking, that can be quite difficult for some of the team members, because I can literally have a conversation with the client about a line of business that we have that's completely different, and I can switch gears in literally 20 seconds to be talking about something completely different. It's just my nature. You do the same. I've seen you do that. We can switch gears pretty quickly. That most people can't keep up with that, and I'm not. That's just because of that risk taking and spontaneous nature. I have to be very careful. And one thing that we do on this team, and I think you can attest to it, we have a number of reflective thinkers on our team that are very planned. And I recognize they have a need to be planned and they need more information than I could probably ever give them. But I try to make it safe for them to say, hey, I don't understand, or I need more information. And I never try to be difficult around, you don't get it, because it's just how they process. So I have appreciation. If we're going to build anything scalable, I've got to make sure I'm giving them the right information to be able to sort of solve that issue. So I try to slow down and not be quite as quick to pivot. And I work on that consciously because I do have that need to be high activity, move things along. Let's move it along. And I can, I rarely get frustrated, Hugh. I really don't. I sort of have other ways to sort of diffuse that because I realize everybody's at a different pace. But I do also recognize that we have to have people on our team that truly deliver. We can't have people that, make excuses, and we don't. We have a really amazing team because in the hiring process and the onboarding process, we do a lot of upfront work to make sure we've got the right people on our team.
Yeah, I think the reliability and delivery is important, and that means at the end of the day that you've got to have the consistent processes. Yeah. But also, it's clear to me the team are comfortable to come to you and tell you when there's a problem. Yeah. And I think that's important. And I think in reality, when we look every Friday at how many questions have come through the support group, given the number of profiles that are running through the system, it's very low. Yeah. And I certainly don't get coming back to me systemic problems, which says that everything is running okay, and you're not spending all your day dealing with systemic problems. Yeah. So that's good. So yeah, I think that's a testament to what you and Ryan have done, in your respective roles. I think, managing the people, but also managing the system to make sure that it works. Yeah. Yeah. And I enjoy it. I actually do sort of, I don't like necessarily dealing with a lot of problems, but I like if it's an issue and we need to resolve it. We do a very good job of after action reviews. If something is a little more complex, reviewing it, where can we make adjustments to improve it? And we've got a great team that really understands that methodology, because I don't think we should ever be a company that's Six Sigma, because I think sometimes you can over-engineer processes, but you've got to sort of find that window of process that really works for a company. And I think we found that ability to sort of problem solve and be receptive to our clients, where they don't feel like they're, nothing, they can't get their problem resolved. We're very quick to do that with our SLAs. Yeah. Yeah. So just switching gears, Leon. So, what do you see your identity as, and, who you will be? We all can evolve to a higher level, even though we're evolved already. But what do you see your identity as, where your greatest impact will be out there in, for DNA, but just generally speaking in business and in life? Yeah, that's a great question. I certainly reflected on that. I think, I probably would have never articulated this when you and I met in 2011, but I probably had it somewhere there in my mind that I was fascinated with behavior back in 2011. I had been working in the field for a while, but I think making it, when I listened to your story around how you created the company, I was just fascinated that the ability to have high impact in organizations, and that's where I really knew it could go.
I think what I would like to be known for is that we've taken behavior, this concept of the behavioral chip, and made it part of a workflow, part of a behavior tech stack. That was sort of in my mind at that time in 2011. We didn't know how to articulate it this way, but I did know I ran a number of team events before I came to DNA behavior. And it was always a really good exercise to go through, but everybody forgot it about 30 minutes after they left the meeting. And it was really hard to remember it. You sort of have to remember on recall, and that's tough. And I've envisioned that making it so easy at your fingertips to be able to help with whether it's in your home and your family or with an organizational team member. It has the ability to have high impact with any two individuals that come together. And that's fascinating to me, that we have all these Helix Gateway partners building different apps that solve those issues. That to me is, and I've said this before, DNA, sort of our unique styles, has the ability to be a very universal standard, not only just in the United States, but really around the world, with financial services or in organizational development. It's got high potential impact.
So I think that's your calling to do that, and that's pretty similar to mine. At the end of the at the end of the day, is putting behavior at people's fingertips, and using technology to do that and having the high impact. But if you said your specific role in that, how you where you exactly stand in terms of your talents and identity in creating that movement, if you want to call it that, what's that piece?
I'd say it's probably the relationships to help them really paint the picture of what they could do. That's why, working with the different partners is really quite important for me to sort of influence that, listening to ideas. We work with a number of people that have great ideas. How do you actually operationalize that in the business to be able to do that? That's where I see probably my biggest impact, is through these relationships of leaders that want to build these apps.
Yeah, so helping leaders operationalize managing the differences is the key thing.
Exactly.
I think for me, I like coming up with the behavioral insights themselves and being able to pinpoint those. I think that's what my impact is. But I think you, because of your relationship skills, is at the end of the day being able to help manage the differences. And ensure the systems do that. I think that's why the concept of sharing the profiles is so important. We've got to do more and more to make sure that the insights are shared real time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just to add to that point, I know we work with a lot of organizations, Hugh, but I think you and I've talked before that, I think from my own family experiences that, using financial DNA within families, I think is such an opportunity. And I'd love to see, it's not just with high net worth family, it's for every family. And it's great to see some of our partners being able to build, whether it's inner city children learning career sort of insights, how they work together as a family, maybe families without fathers. That type of work really inspires me. So I want to be able to see that nurture and develop over time within families, because behavior in families is really not something that's widely used. And I think there's a huge opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I think that's an area we have to explore more. I've actually came up with an idea this morning. I'll share with you another time on maybe how we access that. It's not a new idea, but it's crystallized to me how important it is. But if you said, Leon, just to wrap up, what change do you feel like you need to make to even step closer to your identity as a behavioral insights leader, behavioral relationship leader?
Yeah, I think for our company as we grow, the best part about our company, Hugh, is that we're not huge where you have to go through different departments to get decision making. We are very close to the decision making and making a difference in the company, and I like that. I'm glad that we sort of have a lot of ability in our company, but we are not, hundreds of people. I think that's to our strength to be able to do that, have high impact, but working through these distribution channels to be able to build that's really important. I would, through our progression, that's what I would like to be be doing, is more of that ability to sort of work with these larger firms to be able to be the conduit to, to whatever they're building, to do that, and making sure that our internal shop is running very efficiently. That's quite important to me, that we have the right leadership within our company.
Yeah, I think that's a key part. And then the behavioral change management.
Yeah, which I love. That's the part of, there's such an opportunity, not only in change management, the whole DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, sort of, that's really evolving. That's where a sweet spot for us. I really get involved. I get a lot of satisfaction out of those discussions, and we'll see that probably over the next 5 years, really sort of being used, behavioral science being used in DEI. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, so if I help you pinpoint it, because I think this is an important point that's come up now, is really your gift is, and your identity is, managing behavioral diversity.
Yes.
And that's at that has a lot of connotations, because I think it's just managing differences, but diversity, race, culture, sex, preferences inside organizations, the change management. But I think if you think about that more, is managing, your calling being managing the behavioral diversity.
Yes.
Inside organizations, and including in ours. That's really, I think that's your gift, Leon.
Thank you for articulating that so well, Hugh. I hadn't put the words to that, but that's exactly, what.
Well, you use the words, and I help put them together. But I think that's a lot of what you stand for, and more can be made of that. So, and we need that in our leadership. Is the behavioral diversity.
Absolutely,
it's brought into play, and through the work Ryan's doing, we built the systems to do it, so it's there. But you represent that part. So I know we talked about the confidence book as being an important book that you've read. Just to wrap up, is there another key book that you'd like people to know about?
Yeah, there is actually, Hugh, and this is probably even new for you. There's a book that I've been reading called Holacracy. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but
no.
It's by Brian Robertson. And I was very moved this past week by the death of the Zappos founder, Tony Heish.
Yeah.
And I sort of followed his leadership style, and, he was very much around this concept of self-empowering individuals and coming together. And I've quizzed a couple of our key leaders around sort of their notion of holacracy. And I think it can work, but it's really an interesting organizational sort of, understanding of how organizations work. And I think you've got to be careful not to be one way or too much of the other. So it's a fascinating book that I'm reading, but the other side of it, I was very fascinated by Tony, because I didn't realize he was an addict and had been sort of, really, after he left and after he left his CEO position of Zappos, really cycled down quickly. And I think that's always something that we have to remember with people in their careers. They could have one of the best careers ever, but if you're not careful to really know who you are, that you can cycle down really quickly. And I've had a period in my life early on where, when I was a CPA, having my own firm, where I did cycle down. And I really was able to catch myself and sort of realized I needed to be working in a team environment, because that's really where I thrive. And I think that's always important. So no matter who it is, you have to really keep your behavior in check, because you can really cycle down probably much faster than anybody could ever see or
Yeah,
suspect.
I think that's the point is, then the confidence goes, the wisdom goes, you make one bad decision, and that can be the end. Whether it's not necessarily the end of your life, but it could be the end of your career, or you could do something extremely damaging. That holds you back for a long time. And I think it's important for all of us to realize we've got seasons and not everything works every season, but you've got to stay true to yourself, even when it's not all clicking, so that you can be there when it is your time.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's being, like you say, being confident, and not only just work, because sometimes you just, you become a workaholic and your family relationships suffer. I think you've got it. And that's one of the things I love about our quality life tool, is because it does give you that viewpoint of just how balanced you are in your working relationships and your home relationships and community relationships.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think, the key word today, Leon, is confidence. So we've got to work on keeping people's confidence up. But for you, managing behavioral diversity will be a big part of your identity going forward. So
agree. Thank you.
Thank you for spending time with me. I've enjoyed it. I think we've actually got quite a lot out of this, and it's been great. Thank you, Leon.
Yeah, I suspected that we would. Thank you, Hugh. Always a pleasure. Bye-bye.